So it's the final part of Strategy September, and we are focusing on refurbs. We know this is going to be a popular one. And we also know the resource we're sharing in Hub Extra will be very popular as well.
Welcome to the Property Podcast, where every Thursday morning property investors come to be informed and inspired. This is the last part of our Strategy September series. So if you haven't heard a strategy that sounds spot on for you so far, maybe today is the day, so stick around. So let's get into the news story that's caught our eye this week. And as it has been a lot recently, it's about politics. But unusually, Rob, there seems to be a good news story relating to politics.
It really is, and that's possibly why it didn't get that much coverage, because it is good news. Thank you to Nathan for emailing this one on to me. And the link that you'll find in our show notes on the Property Hub website is a press release from the government, and it's Prime Minister Boris Johnson will today renew drive to give more power to northern regions. Now, there's not a lot of detail here, which is fairly typical for government announcements, as we found out over the last few years. But the sentiment is pleasing. Scotland has benefited dramatically by having more say on what it puts its money into and how it runs itself as a country. Now, there's no talk here of devolution or anything that far-fetched, but the fact is, the Northern Powerhouse and the Midlands are often overlooked by our London-led government. You only need to look at the transport spend per person to see that huge difference. And the theme of this press release does seem to focus on transport. So we'll see what happens. We've got this thing going on at the moment. What is it? Brexit? So this Brexit thing's happening. When that's done, although, again, not much coverage there, we'll finally see what sort of policies will be introduced. That's if Boris is still in charge. And again, we don't even know that at the moment. But if he is, this is a positive move. Hopefully we'll see all parties rally around for more support and investment in the North and the Midlands, so we can really have a balanced economy, which will help London and everywhere else. So nothing concrete yet, but as it's good news, and at the moment the media can only seem to deliver as doom and gloom, we thought we'd put it into the show notes. So watch this space.
Just before we get into our main topic this week, worth flagging something that we offer that we haven't talked about for a while because, frankly, we've been a bit overwhelmed. And that's a free goals call with a member of our team. So the idea is, if you're not completely clear about what strategy you should be pursuing, or if you've got a vague goal but you don't know how to break it down into action steps, or you don't know how to go about setting your property goals at all, then we want to remove that barrier for you. And that's why you can get on the phone with a member of our team for half an hour or so. It'll cost you nothing at all. And they, with all their experience and all the investors they've spoken to in the past, will be in the perfect position to give you some guidance, get you clear and get you moving again. So this will be valuable whether you're completely new to property or if you've made some progress, but now you feel like you're not quite sure where to go next. As I said, it's completely free. There's not going to be any sneaky hard sell for anything snuck in there. It's just a really useful service that we wanted to offer because we see this holding so many investors back. And we make it really easy for you to book. So if you just go to propertyhub.net/goals, so that's propertyhub.net/goals, there'll be a calendar on there. You can choose your day and time, get yourself booked in and get some clarity.
So all month long, we've been taking you through strategy. So obviously, this is Strategy September. We've covered buy-to-lets, HMOs, and we've covered flips. But today we're going to overlap with flips a little bit and look at a refurbing strategy.
Yes, and just like we did when we were talking about HMOs, we've called in another expert to join us for this one. So we're talking to Ian. We've had Ian on the podcast twice before talking about working with builders. You'll find links to those episodes in the show notes. And we've got him back again because he has got years of experience in all forms of building and construction. And he's also a developer and investor himself. So he's got that rare ability to look at the situation from both points of view. So great to have Ian back. And we wanted to start simple, make sure we're all on the same page and ask him, very basically, what is a refurb?
My definition or thought on refurbishment is taking a property and improving its look to try and get an improved value at the end of the day. And a refurbishment can be as simple as painting and decorating, cleaning the windows, tidying the garden, right the way through to complete refurbishment, kitchens taken out, bathrooms out, plaster off the walls, right back to the shell. That definition can be the simplest or the most complicated, and anywhere in between.
So that all seems pretty straightforward. So let's get some examples of what refurbs are all about.
So looking at an example of a light refurb, a light means as little work. I mean that in financial terms, as little work as possible. Generally, most houses really need some sort of decoration and change the carpets and floor coverings as a basic. Whether you are keeping the house yourself to rent out or trying to sell them again with an uplifted value. So that I would say is the basic one. Things like checking the boiler and the electrics and making sure that there are no issues. If you were to go and A, sell, and B, rent, you don't want issues when you have done a little refurb to find that the boiler and the electrics aren't what they need to be. So whilst the refurb might be light in terms of painting and decorating or some floor coverings, it's always advisable to check that the electrics and the boilers are serviceable and fit for purpose for whatever end you have in mind, whether it be a sale or a rental. So that's a basic refurbishment. Sometimes you can change the look of a kitchen with not necessarily changing the kitchen, but changing the kitchen doors, which is sort of inexpensive. Changing different wall coverings in the kitchen might change the look of the kitchen where it's perceived to add more value. Similarly, in the bathroom, without going to the expense of taking baths out and showers out, sometimes you can change the tiles, or you can do something with the lights. You can add in a blind, or just change the shower head or the taps just to make them a little bit more updated, without going to the trouble of taking things out completely. So those are the sort of the lighter refurb, the middle refurb, and then if we're looking at a full refurbishment, where things like taking kitchens completely out, bathrooms completely out, taking the plaster off the walls, rewiring if necessary, or certainly changing the position of sockets and switches, and obviously heating again. If you're at that level of refurbishment, I'm guessing the boiler's going to be on its last legs or on the end of its lifespan. And if you're at that position in terms of the amount of work to be done, then you would have already have forecast the costs. You would have looked at it before you buy it and think, yeah, we'll actually change that boiler, or you'd have taken advice from a plumber to change that boiler. So the costs shouldn't be a complete surprise. They should be well known to the point where you've got some comfort in your price range for each of your light refurb, middle refurb, and complete overhaul.
So again, very straightforward. Refurbs don't have to mean knocking everything down and starting again from scratch. It could just be making a few cosmetic changes, or bringing things like the heating up to date if it's getting towards the end of its lifespan. Or it could be a lot more intense and be pretty much creating a brand new property. Refurb is just one little word, but it encompasses a really broad spectrum of what you might be wanting to do. But whether it's just a little bit of cosmetic stuff here and there, or you are going for a much more serious project, either way, it's more effort than just buying a property that's ready to go. So why are we doing it? What are the advantages?
Advantages of refurbishment. You've got the potential to add value, so you can sell it for more. You could sell your property for more by adding value. So that's the most obvious one if you were to sell that property. If you've then decided, I'm going to keep that property, then one of the reasons why you would refurbish the properties, there are a couple of reasons, or there's more than 2 reasons, but one is potentially you will attract a better, and I put that in sort of air quotes, a better tenant. You would certainly induce more tenants to want to look at it compared to other properties. So you've got that likability, that wow factor. You would also reduce your tenant issues by doing a basic spec, new carpets, for example, decoration, maybe change things, looking at the boiler and the electrics. What you do want is a tenant that's happy because they pay on time, there's no issues, that's what we're renting for. And if you don't attend to those things at the refurb, then the tenant's going to be unhappy with things breaking or the state of the carpet. And I know they look at the property before they rent, but I found that as soon as people have been in there for a couple of months, then they start to get upset about the state of the carpet, for example, if you've not changed it, or can I do the decoration? And then you're into, different situations. So I would say that it's got some benefits, attracting tenants and less issues from a management point of view.
Now remember, the whole point of doing a refurb is not because you love doing it, it's because you're adding value. If you like refurbing properties and you're not interested in profit, stick to your own home. I know it sounds crazy, but I've met many people who just want to make houses look pretty, and there's nothing wrong with that, but this is the wrong business model for you. Become an interior designer or practice on your own home. But with this strategy, it's crucial that you add value because there's a huge benefit to doing it.
Once you've done your light refurb in both those sectors, i.e. if you're going to flip it and sell it, or if you're going to keep it, then obviously by doing this work, you're going to add some value so you can refinance and pull some of your deposit out down the line, which is great for you to then go and buy another one and do the same. So trying to find properties where you can add some value. And sometimes adding value is not necessarily staring you in the face. You go to a property and think it needs to be run down to add value. Sometimes you can add value by splitting a bedroom from a 2-bed to a 3-bed with a simple, stud wall and a couple of changes to a plumbing and electrics. That way you can add massive value because you can increase the rental from a 2-bed to a 3-bed for proportionally a less of an outlay.
So this is where we get into the real power of refurbs as a strategy. The ability to build a portfolio quickly by refurbishing, increasing the value, then being able to refinance against that higher value to pull some of your money back out to use it again. It's such a powerful concept that we had a whole episode about it recently. We spoke to mortgage broker Dave Cookson about this in episode 333. You'll find a link to that in the show notes. Do go and listen to that straight after this episode if you're interested in refurbs as a strategy, because he goes through exactly how this works, what you need to look out for, and why you might want to do it. Effectively, though, by adding value, it means that you can recycle some of that capital and move on to the next property faster because you don't have to wait to save up a whole deposit again. A lot of investors use this strategy to accelerate their portfolio growth if they've got ambitious goals and they want to get there quickly. Okay, so with refurbs, you've got to put in some work, but there are some pretty huge upsides to compensate you. But there are some downsides as well.
Refurbishment has two sides of the coin, just like everything else. I think there's two. There's the risk of things going wrong, whether it be plaster falling off that you didn't see, and then obviously that risk then goes into money for you to put things back. I think on a previous podcast I mentioned about perhaps having a contingency when you view the property and making sure that your offer is suitably loaded with some contingency, so that if you do come across a bit of risk, which then means a bit more money spent, then at least you feel a bit more safer in your numbers because you've included some money for risk when you made the offer. And if you don't have the risk, then that's great. Your value is increased. If that risk manifests itself, then your numbers hopefully will cope with all of it or most of it. So it's not a complete shock. Whilst the downside is more money and risk, you can help yourself by being pessimistic with the numbers. I always think of myself as a pessimistic optimist. So what I mean by that is when I look at a house, whether I want to sell it afterwards or to keep it and rent it, I always err on the side of caution on the numbers when I look at how much things cost so that I don't get disappointed at the end.
Caution is key here. Things are going to go wrong. It may be small, it may be huge, but things are probably going to go wrong, especially as you begin to implement this strategy on your first few properties. There are going to be things that you just don't think of, and those costs can add up. And the bigger the project, unfortunately, means sometimes the bigger the problems. So, like Ian said, being very careful with your numbers, not assessing a deal on everything going right and you achieving the best numbers. No, quite the opposite. Make sure that you budget for things going wrong and costing more than you expected and maybe not quite getting the valuation that you'd hoped for. That's a better way of going about this. And you should treat every potential project that way. Now, that will mean that you'll rule more projects out. However, when you find one that works, you can get excited.
The other area to think about is obviously you're buying the property to rent. Say, if you're buying cash, great, that's the utopia. If not, you are borrowing money from the banks or whichever lender that you're borrowing from, there's going to be a financial charge to that. And obviously, refurbishment, whether it's small, medium or large, does have a time implication, and things do crop up, and that time then becomes more because there is more work involved. So again, when you're looking at your sit down with your little spreadsheet or your pen and paper and you're looking at the numbers and thinking, yeah, this will be the cost for the building work and this will be the rental cost, don't forget to factor in that you'll be paying, depending how you structure that, you might be paying interest on your money that you've borrowed. And it might take 2 weeks to do a simple refurb, but you'll have 2 weeks worth of interest on your money. There'll be no rent being paid. Same with council tax. So you'll have other costs that you need to factor in. But if you are careful at the start, those things shouldn't be a surprise and should really be thought about in your initial calculations.
So this is where you can really come unstuck. Unexpectedly having to do something like replaster a wall or do a rewire is going to sting. It's definitely something that you want to avoid by being prepared. But it gets even worse if that happens while you're paying interest on a finance product, especially if it's something that comes with a higher interest rate, like a bridging product. So it's impossible to overstate the importance of doing your numbers, make sure you've accounted for everything, and you've allowed a contingency as well. You do not want to go through all the effort of doing this just to run out of money towards the end and have to take a loss. So now we've been through the pros, we've been through the cons. What pieces of wisdom can Ian leave us to go away with?
If you're looking at refurbing, I think whether you're going to sell or whether you are going to rent, there are some commonalities amongst everything. One is who's going to rent it, and therefore you can tailor the look of that property. So, for example, if you're buying a bungalow and the demographics in that area is going to be people who've retired, then maybe you should look at how you change the bathroom to suit their needs. So look at your market. Be pessimistic with your costs. Do not be optimistic. And make sure that you have some contingency, because things always happen, no matter what. Before you make that offer, take some advice, speak to some builders in terms of the cost, and look at a couple of options on that property and think, okay, if I do a light refurb, that would mean X for a sale, or that would mean Y for a rental. If I do a middle refurb, maybe I could achieve a little bit more on the rental, maybe I could achieve a little bit more on a sale, but then how much is that cost? So you need to just try and do a little cost-benefit analysis. So if it costs me an extra £2,000, will I get another £100 a month rent? If so, then how many months will that take me to get my money back? I don't want to be a complete pessimist, but you need to be realistic with the numbers before you make any offers. And it might mean that offers that you make get rejected, but it's better to have some comfort knowing if something goes wrong, you're covered. Let's say something happens and it takes an extra 2 weeks, and you're 2 weeks worth extra of finance that you couldn't foresee. But if you've built something in, then you feel a little bit more comfortable. I would also, if you were looking to refurb and you're going to do more of these, then maybe think about some standards that you want to implement. And I mean by, we're going to use this carpet, this colour. We're going to use this type of kitchen or kitchen door or this type of tap, so that you know on any of your properties, if there are any issues, you know what is there and where it is and where you can get spares from fairly quickly. So just being practical, because the more of these that you do, your time efficiency becomes more important.
So this is very similar to when we spoke to Rob about HMOs a couple of episodes back. A lot of this can be applied across your entire property journey, no matter what strategy you implement in the end. Thinking about what you're doing and why is crucial. Really get to know your market and think with the end in mind, not what you like or what you want to do. Think about your end user and what's going to be important to them. Another key lesson is running your numbers. I know we touched on this already, but it's so important. It might sound or look good to have a new kitchen and bathroom, and you can pick the one that you really like and pay that bit more for it. But will you achieve a significantly higher rent or valuation for that investment? Maybe, but maybe not. Just check, be clear. Don't make your decisions on emotion. Use the numbers. Let the numbers guide you when you make your decisions. And I think another key lesson here is having that standardized approach when you work, because you can make things cheaper and become more efficient with every single project. Yes, okay, of course, it's going to be more exciting to demonstrate your creative touches on every property you come across, but that's not really the point here. You need to add value in every deal. And that shouldn't be a fingers crossed moment at the end to see if your creative flair has delivered that. It should be your knowledge bank that you're going to build up on project after project tells you what works. Your research informs you, not your creative gut instinct. Remember, if that's what you're in it for, start an interior design business or something like that. Refurbs, although they sound sexy, actually should be methodical, conservative, and predictable. There's a lot during the process of a refurb that isn't any of those things. And of course, with refurbs, all that goes out the window when things go wrong. But that's why being unemotional about the process, or as unemotional as possible, is the best approach. So it's not for everyone. The time cost and the risk will put some people off. But the upsides and the potential payoff will also attract a lot of people to this strategy.
So there we have it. That is your introduction to refurbs, the fourth of the 4 strategies that we've been talking about as part of Strategy September. The idea with this series hasn't been to say, here are all the strategies, now go off and do all of them. These are all the things that you could do, and by doing everything, you'll be able to be successful. No, quite the opposite. The idea is to show you all the things that are possible, so you can then look at the pros and cons, think about your situation, decide which is the most likely to be the right one for you, and then focus in. Go and explore those 1 or 2 strategies in more detail. You'll find lots of links throughout the show notes for each episode. You can also go to the website, propertyhub.net/podcast. Do a search there. You'll find all kinds of episodes to help you get into more depth with whichever strategy catches your eye.
And strategy is key, but so are goals. You need to know what you're doing before you implement a strategy, because so many people get confused. They'll start with, which strategy do I want to do? That's not what you should be doing. You should be very focused on the outcome, your goals, not I want to do this type of thing or that. No. What we mean by this is, what is the result? Why are you even investing in property? Why do it? Get very clear on the goal, and that will help you pick the strategy that you need to implement. Now, of course, your lifestyle may rule in some strategies and out others. So it's a combination of that self-awareness of where you are right now and also that awareness of where you want to get to. Because the combination of the two will make you so much more effective when you go on this journey. And if you're actually listening thinking, I've already started the journey and I've not got very clear on my current circumstances or my goals, then maybe it's time for a quick pause and just make sure that you are on the right path. And this is why this year we introduced goals calls, because people are very good at reading up on strategy or listening to different types of strategies and making decisions that way and doing the general research. And hopefully the podcast and all the other resources we've put out really help and aid with that. But a common theme is that people don't find it a natural process to talk about their goals and also ask themselves good questions to make sure they come out with the right goals. So that's why we created the goals calls. And that's why so many people have taken advantage of them, and we just love that you have. If you want to get very clear on your goals, go to propertyhub.net/goals. It's absolutely free. You don't have to pay for anything. And it's just about helping you understand what you should be doing by asking you great questions. It's a bit of a no-brainer. So that's why our goals calls are this week's Hub Extra. So head to propertyhub.net/goals.
Just before we wrap up for this week and wrap up the whole Strategy September series, we've got time to hear your success stories. Every week we love to hear from a hubber who's making great progress, whether they've just landed their first deal, finished a refurb, or just started taking their first steps. We love hearing about the action you've taken, so you can let us know on the socials. We're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at Property Hub UK. You can let us know on the forum. You can send us an email. You can do it whichever way you like. This week we're hearing from Doug, who sent us a message on Facebook. And Doug says, I'm no stranger to property, having bought my first place in northern Scotland in 2002. I've got 2 buy-to-lets in Liverpool, 1 in Kirkdale and 1 in Burnley just completed that's been tenanted in very short order. If I'd followed my instinct in 2002 and refinanced when I knew there was equity in my first place and invested in places like Liverpool, I'd be laughing now. However, the market was much more restrained back then and I didn't have access to like-minded people. I'm probably not doing too badly at the moment, but I'm sure I could have done better with training and a bit of collaboration and some research. Love the podcast. Keep it going. Thank you, Doug. Really great to hear. And it's something we hear quite a bit. People who got into property a while ago almost instinctively or maybe accidentally, and then just have it sit there in the background, only to come back to it years later and go, oh, actually, you know what? Property's been really kind to me. Maybe I should do more with it. So Doug, thanks for getting in touch. And we would love to hear your success story as well. So however you're taking action, whatever stage you're at, we want to hear about it. You can find us on the socials, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at Property Hub UK, or on the forum at propertyhub.net/forum.
Oh, boo-hoo. That's the end of Strategy September. How can we top this? It's been a fantastic month and hopefully you've learnt a lot. Well, I tell you what, next week we might just be able to top this. Certainly compete. We've got a very, very special guest on who's been creating waves in the property industry. Who is he? Well, you'll have to wait to find out. But it's so good, it's a 2-part special. So make sure you're subscribed and you listen to that episode next Thursday. But don't worry, we'll be back on Tuesday with Ask Rob and Rob to keep you going until then. So set a reminder for next Thursday morning for that very special podcast. But until then, take care everyone, have fun, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.